Now, on the issues, I heard you mention intersectionality, and that's something that we talk about on our show a lot. I don't like to just say it without, kind of unpacking it for our audience. But from your perspective, why is the conversation of intersectionality important, particularly in this 2016 race, when and even though you're running on a state level and you're not yet running against a Republican for that seat, but in this race, it seems to be a competition between people who want to focus on intersectionality and identity politics and those nuanced conversations versus people who really don't even want to don't want to hear about it. Like, they're just completely oblivious to any type of concern. So why do you feel like it's important, and how does it play into your campaign?
Well, in the words of Justin Trudeau, because it's 2016, we can't be stuck in the past anymore where we ignore the fact that, race and class and gender and education and religion all interplay so heavily into each other. So when we look at the people who are disenfranchised and living on the fringe of society, we have to understand the path that it took to get us to where we are, that, special groups have special interests, and we need to be able to, if not speak to them, listen to them and understand the experiences that we haven't had for ourselves, and make sure that we incorporate the voices of those who, were not a part of those communities, that we make sure, I don't know how I want to put this, I want to make sure that I'm somebody who listens, and I think the biggest thing that I understand more and more as I go on in the campaign is that there are so many parts of reality that we're all experiencing, and there's no way that one person is capable of being competent in all of them. And if you want to make sure that you end the systematic injustices that, keep so many people at the bottom and so many people at the top, you need to make sure that you're listening, that you're cognizant, that you're making sure all these things that work together can be solved together, because otherwise you're just going to be putting Band-Aids on bullet holes.
Okay, let's dive into this concept of intersectionality a little deeper. Then, and not to, anything else that you want to talk about, please feel free. But I'm just curious about this intersectionality conversation because I do believe in the need to recognize the different corners that people exist on. Right, I didn't want to be redundant with intersections, but people have different experiences. So you have people who are women, who are women of color, who are LGBTQ women of color, and then you have people who are LGBTQ women of color and in poverty, or they may have special needs, or wherever intersection that they exist on. Let me ask you, in the context of your campaign, where do you put priorities? Do you feel like you can place your priorities on all of these issues, or do you feel like when you get to the State House, you're going to have to drill down on a particular issue? And if so, what would be that issue?
I think probably the most pressing issue is probably poverty, because I think that's the thing that sort of keeps people, oppressed, very, very largely oppressed socially, because if you can't lift yourself up out of poverty, you can't lift yourself up through education because of our current educational system. You can't lift yourself up through the workforce because, all of these different factors of, not being able to present well enough, or not being able to walk through the same path that it requires in order to get into an upper leadership position in the corporate world.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's probably the number one thing. But I also would like to kind of separate from that all of the issues that we look at from now on, I think we need to look at them with an intersectional lens. We have to make sure that we're seeing, when we're talking about immigration, the ways that also affects our economy, and the way that affects our jobs, and the ways that affects poverty, and then the way that also affects our criminal justice system. We can't be one-dimensional anymore. It's not a functional way to fix our society.
I was hoping you would continue talking. I actually agree with you 100% on that, and I'm looking for my lame clap track, but I just want to applaud you for that. I like what you said, that every issue, regardless of the issue, we need to take a moment, if not several moments, and consider the different intersections of how different people will be affected by said policy. And I like the reason, because if no other reason, it's 2016. It's time for us to stop looking in a one-dimensional lens, because people have different experiences and we have to meet them where they are. So then let's go one step further. Let's talk about intersectionality in terms of Black Lives Matter, in terms of poverty and the competition. It seems like there's a competition then between matters of race and matters of economics. And you seem to be well versed on these types of issues. And mind you, I don't know exactly in Connecticut on the state level how pressing of an issue that will be every day or maybe once in your term there. But you really are shedding some insight on a conversation that I think is worthwhile. So let's just go off here in terms of the competition that seems to exist between people of color, Black Lives Matter, and a conversation on economics. You know, where do you find the balance? Because there are a lot of Black people who are saying, you know, we don't have time to worry about the economics right now because people are dying in the streets. But then you have other people who are saying, you know, I can't pay my rent, you know, and if I can't pay my rent, then I'm more prone to get in trouble with the law or just to be out on the streets. So how do you find in your mind, where is the balance in these competing forces, particularly when you're dealing with this intersection between race and economics?
So I think a big part of, of racial issues and poverty are, as implied by intersectionality, very deeply connected.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're thinking about, all of this crime and violence, that's a direct result of poverty. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I think I'm going to go rob a store. I think that sounds like a good idea. That isn't something that just sounds like a good idea. It comes from desperation. It comes from hopelessness. It comes from hunger. It comes from fear. And the only way that we can conquer that is by making sure that we're uplifting our Black and brown brothers and sisters and making sure that their communities are getting the special attention that they need due to our deep history of inequality in this nation. Mm-hmm. So I think that's my ultimate answer to that.
Somebody's calling you in the middle of our interview. Whoever that is, tell them we're having a great conversation.
Sorry.
Okay, so